In Millbrook's quiet streets, she walked alone, a shadow of courage the town had never known. A voice from the speakers whispered her name, Reaper Origin, and nothing would be the same. Asterisk, before we dive in, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a story like this. Now, let's jump into the tale of Elise Harper, a brave, unstoppable Reaper Origin, and the mysterious siren speakers that changed everything. The small town of Millbrook, Tennessee, had a quiet way of underestimating people. Streets were lined with modest houses, white picket fences, and the occasional pickup truck rattling past, and the residents took pride in knowing everyone's business. That was the problem for Elise Harper. Brave, determined, and endlessly sharp, she had moved back to her hometown after a stint in the military, hoping to find purpose, but in Millbrook, her past only made her a target for quiet ridicule. Elise was walking down the main street one crisp morning, the fall sun glinting off her black boots, her jacket zipped tightly against the chill. Heads turned, but not in admiration. Whispers followed her. Isn't that Harper? She thinks she's too good for Millbrook now. Her reputation as a former intelligence officer didn't earn her respect here. It earned suspicion. People didn't understand courage. They saw arrogance. Her destination was a small, inconspicuous electronics shop near the edge of town, a place she'd scouted for weeks. Inside, the scent of dust and circuitry mixed with the faint tongue of solder. The owner, an older man named Carl, greeted her with a wary nod. Back again, Elise? Testing more of those gadgets of yours? Elise smiled faintly, holding her, chin high despite the sharp tone in his voice. You know me, Carl. I like to make sure technology works before it gets sold to people who might actually need it. Today it's the siren speakers. Have you got them set up? Carl gestured toward a corner where a sleek, black speaker sat atop a counter. Yeah, but you're the first one to try the voice recognition feature. Honestly, I don't know why anyone would even bother. His voice dripped skepticism. It's probably more trouble than it's worth. Elise didn't flinch. I'll take my chances. She had learned, during long nights in the military, that confidence was a shield against doubt and Millbrooks. Judgments were nothing compared to the dangers she had faced overseas. She powered on the speaker, its surface glowing faintly. The room was silent except for the hum of electricity. Elise leaned closer, her hand brushing over the smooth casing. Hello? She said, her voice steady. A beat of silence. Then, startlingly clear and calm, a voice responded. Welcome back, Reaper Origin. Elise froze. Her heart skipped a beat, not because the voice was threatening, but because it knew. Knew her coding name from her classified missions. Carl blinked in shock. Wait, what did it say? Elise's mind raced. Only the military, a handful of all eyes, and a few enemies would know that name. And now, in a dusty electronics shop in Millbrook, it had been spoken aloud like some kind of omen. Do it again, she said, voice firmer, trying to steady herself. Say it. Welcome back, Reaper Origin, the speaker repeated, calm, deliberate. Carl's skepticism evaporated. This shouldn't happen. It shouldn't even be able to recognize that name. Elise felt a shiver of both awe and unease. Something was different about these speakers. They weren't just smart. They were almost aware. She ran a few quick diagnostics, checking the logs, scanning the network access, but found nothing. No source, no database, nothing that should have triggered such a precise recognition. Outside, the streets of Millbrook carried on, oblivious to the anomaly inside the shop. Kids played in yards, and an old man swept his porch, muttering under his breath about the coming winter. Here, she could be anyone but in that room. With that voice speaking her past back to her, she felt exposed, vulnerable in a way Millbrook had never seen. Carl finally broke the silence. Elise, do you think someone put this in here? Some kind of joke? She shook her head slowly. No. Whoever did this knows me, and knows what I've done. This isn't a prank. Her mind flashed back to the missions she had led. Covert operations, hostage rescues, intelligence recoveries. Every time she had succeeded, it had required meticulous planning, courage under fire, and the willingness to stand alone. She had faced enemies who would have loved to see her broken. And now, even in Millbrook, someone or something was, signaling that her past was not as buried as she had hoped. You need to see this, she said to Carl, grabbing her jacket. I'm taking it with me. Outside the shop, the wind picked up, rustling leaves along the street. Elise felt the familiar surge of adrenaline she had once depended on in battle. This was no longer about proving herself to the town. It was about uncovering a threat, or perhaps a truth that had been lying in wait. As she walked to her car, she heard the distant voices of neighbors mocking her from across the street. She's always acting so important, thinking she's some kind of hero. She ignored them. She had learned long ago that strength was quiet, internal, and resilient. They could whisper, mock, or doubt her all they wanted. What mattered was action, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown, even when the unknown recognized you by name. Elise started the engine, her eyes glinting with resolve. The first step had been taken, but the journey ahead promised to test her in ways that Millbrook, or even the military, had never prepared her for. And somewhere deep in her gut, she knew the siren speakers were only the beginning. The drive out of Millbrook felt longer than usual. Elise's mind was a whirlwind of possibilities, theories, and unease. The crisp autumn wind rattled the edges of her truck windows, and the radio played soft, indistinct static, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what was coming. She kept the siren speaker on the passenger seat, its faint glow pulsing in time with her heartbeat, and her hand rested lightly over it, as though she could sense its secrets. Through the casing, Elise had lived through tense missions overseas, but nothing had prepared her for this. Here, in what she had thought was a quiet, predictable life, a machine had spoken her codiname, a name she had sworn only a handful of people would ever know. Questions churned in her mind. Who had access to this technology? Why now? And most importantly, what did they want? Her first stop was the old military base just outside town. Though officially decommissioned, it still held a skeleton crew, a handful of veterans who knew Elise and trusted her instincts. The base's gates were rusted but functional, and the silence that greeted her as she drove up the gravel road was almost comforting. Here she had all eyes. Here, people didn't whisper behind her back. Inside the makeshift office, she laid the speaker on the table. Staff Sergeant Malcolm, a grizzled veteran with a sharp eye and an unshakable sense of humor, raised an eyebrow. Well, if it isn't the infamous Reaper Origin herself. Come to scare us all again? Elise smiled faintly, though her nerves were taut. Something strange is happening, Malcolm. The siren speaker's someone or something recognized me. It knows my codiname. Malcolm frowned, stepping closer to examine the device. That's impossible. Those things are mass-produced for entertainment and smart homes. None of them are built to track identities at that level. Who would? His voice trailed off as he listened to the speaker, which repeated in its calm, mechanical tone. Welcome back, Reaper Origin. Elise felt the familiar twinge of unease. Exactly, and I need answers. I need to know who made this, and why they're bringing my past back to me now. Malcolm crossed his arms. You've always had a knack for trouble, Harper. But if this is real, you're stepping into something deeper than Millbrook gossip or local tech quirks. You need to be careful. She nodded, her jaw set. She had faced dangers that would have made most people tremble. She had survived missions where the odds were stacked against her and walked away with nothing but scars and the knowledge that failure was not an option. Millbrook or even a rogue piece of technology would not shake her. Over the next few days, Elise began her investigation. She ran diagnostics, traced networks, and scoured every possible source of interference. Every lead seemed to vanish into thin air. Whoever had designed the speaker had covered their tracks meticulously. Elise's frustration grew, but so did her determination. This was personal now. One evening, while running a new set of scans, Elise noticed an anomaly. A small, hidden signal originating from the neighboring town's industrial park. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it carried the same digital signature as the Siren speakers. Someone was broadcasting or monitoring, and it was deliberate. Elise packed her gear and set out toward the industrial park, moving cautiously under the cover of dusk. She parked several blocks away, keeping the truck in shadows, and approached the facility on foot. The air smelled faintly of oil and concrete, the distant hum of machinery mixing with the wind. She ducked behind crates and machinery, moving with the precision of someone trained to operate under pressure. Inside the building, she discovered rows of servers, blinking lights, and a small team of technicians, all unaware of her presence. She watched as one of them activated another Siren speaker. The same calm, deliberate voice echoed, "Welcome back, Reaper Origin." Elise's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain silent. Whoever these people were, they were sophisticated, organized, and dangerous. This was no prank. This was intelligence work at its highest level, and somehow she had become the target. Suddenly, a shadow fell across her path. A man, tall, dressed in black tactical gear, blocked her exit. "You're trespassing," he said, voice low, calm, but laced with authority. "Step away from the equipment." Elise raised her hands slightly, measuring him. "I'm not here to fight," she said steadily, "but I need answers. Who are you, and why do you know me?" The man paused, studying her. For a moment, Elise felt the same unease she had faced in the shop with Carl. Then he spoke. "You're more than just a soldier, aren't you?" Reaper Origin wasn't just a code name, it was a warning. And now, it seems someone wants you to remember why. Elise's stomach tightened. Every instinct screamed danger, but her training and resolve took over. She had faced enemies with less information, fewer advantages. She would not back down, not now, not ever. As she and the man stood there, locked in a tense standoff, Elise realized that this journey would test everything she had learned about courage, sacrifice, and the lies, and the delicate line between justice and vengeance. The Siren speakers were only the beginning. Whatever or whoever was behind them had opened a door to her past, and she would walk through it, no matter the cost. The night deepened, and the facility's lights cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Elise's mind raced with strategy, possibilities, and the gnawing sense that the truth she sought was just within reach, but only if she could survive the first step. The standoff in the industrial facility stretched longer than Elise expected. The man in tactical black gear studied her silently, his eyes sharp, calculating, as though he was weighing not just her intentions, but her worth. Elise kept her posture firm. Years of military service had taught her one simple truth: hesitation could be fatal, and fear had no place when survival depended on focus. Finally, the man spoke again, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. "You've been watched for a long time, Reaper Origin. Your missions, your moves, they were never just under military scrutiny. There are people who saw potential, who knew what you were capable of, and now they want you back in play." Elise's mind worked frantically. Who were these people? Why now? The voice of the siren speaker rang in her ears again, soft and deliberate. "Welcome back, Reaper Origin." It wasn't just a greeting, it was a summons, a warning, a challenge. "Don't know who you are or what you want," Elise said, her voice steady, her tone icy. "But I'm not someone you can intimidate. If you want answers, you tell me. Otherwise, I walk out of here and you never see me again." The man gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "That's why you're still alive. Most people don't have the spine you do." He gestured toward the servers and devices around them. These speakers, they were never meant for civilians. They were designed for surveillance, identification, and extraction. And someone powerful is using them to track you. Elise's mind raced. Surveillance? Extraction? Her code name wasn't just a label. It had been a warning to enemies, a shield and a sword all at once. And now it had been resurrected in a town she thought she could call home. Her pulse steadied. "Then tell me who. I need names. I need faces. I need the truth." The man hesitated, his gaze flicking to the rows of servers humming softly around them. "It's not safe to say here. But if you want answers, there's only one way. You follow me, and you trust no one else. They've been waiting, watching, testing. You were never supposed to come back. But now that you are, you have a chance to fix things." Elise didn't flinch. Her training, her instincts, her sense of justice, they told her to move forward. She followed him through narrow corridors, past locked rooms filled with blinking lights and soft hums, into a small control chamber. Here, a bank of monitors displayed dozens of feeds, towns, streets, facilities, even military convoys. Elise's stomach tightened as she realized the scope. Whoever was behind this had reach, resources, and an agenda that dwarfed Millbrook's small-town problems. Who are they? She asked, voice low, almost reverent with caution. "They call themselves the Directorate," the man said. "They operate in shadows, influencing governments, tech companies, even private security. You were part of a program they funded. Reaper. Origin wasn't just your code name, it was a designation. And now, they want you back." Elise felt the weight of the revelation. Her past, the missions she had carried out with precision and secrecy, were pieces of a game she hadn't realized. She was playing. And now, someone had pulled her back into it. "You mean they've been behind everything? The missions, the intel leaks, the extraction ops?" She asked, disbelief coloring her voice. He nodded. "Some of it, most of it. And they've been waiting for you to return. The siren speakers were the bait designed to test whether you were still capable, still willing, still dangerous." Elise clenched her fists. Anger, betrayal, and resolve surged through her. For months, she had endured whispers in Millbrook, mockery from neighbors, and suspicion from anyone who didn't understand the courage it took to survive. And now, a secret organization had been pulling strings behind the scenes all along. "I'm not their pawn," she said firmly. "I've survived worse than their tests. And if they want me back in the game, they'll have to face me on my terms." The man gave a small smile, respect evident in his eyes. "Good. That's why I'm here. They underestimated you once. Don't let them do it again." Over the next few days, Elise trained relentlessly. She studied the speaker's technology, reverse-engineered its code, and mapped the network. Each discovery revealed a deeper layer of complexity. Encrypted signals, adaptive AI, voice recognition that could identify operatives across multiple regions. The more she learned, the more she understood the true danger. She wasn't just facing a rogue tech experiment. She was confronting an organization capable of global influence. But Elise was not alone. The man who had confronted her in the facility, who introduced himself only as Kane, became a mentor, ally, and strategist. Together, they devised a plan not just to uncover the Directorate, but to expose them, dismantle their operations, and reclaim the narrative that had been stolen from her. Yet, even as they plotted, Elise couldn't ignore the emotional toll. Memories of past missions resurfaced: the friends she had lost, the moral compromises she had made, the innocence she could never recover. The whispers of Millbrook seemed distant now, almost trivial, but the scars remained. And each time the Siren speakers repeated her coding name, she felt the weight of expectation, legacy, and destiny pressing down. One night, as she stared at the glow of the monitors, Kane spoke softly. "You're not just fighting them for yourself, Elise. You're fighting for everyone who trusted you, for the truth that's been buried, and for the justice that's been denied. That's what makes you dangerous, and why they fear you." Elise's jaw tightened. She knew he was right. Fearless, relentless, and morally uncompromising, she had always been the one others underestimated, and that had been their greatest mistake. The next step was clear: infiltration. They needed proof, leverage, and a way to dismantle the Directorate from within. And Elise knew, deep in her bones, that this mission would demand everything she had: courage, cunning, and sacrifice. As the night deepened, Elise felt the familiar rush of adrenaline she had once relied on in life-or-death missions. Millbrook, with its petty judgments and whispers, seemed a lifetime away. What lay ahead was bigger, darker, and more dangerous, but she would face it head-on. Because Reaper, Origin, was not a name given lightly, and she would make sure it was respected. Elise spent the next week preparing for infiltration with methodical precision. Every detail mattered: the patterns of security patrols, the timing of server backups, even the way the Siren speakers could be exploited. Kane provided guidance, but he gave her space. He knew her strength, her ability to think several moves ahead. This was not a mission to be rushed. It was a chess match, and one wrong step could mean disaster. The target was a high-security data center several towns over, rumored to be a central hub for the Directorate's operations. Elise drove in under the cover of darkness, her black SUV blending into the shadows of empty streets. The air was cold, crisp, and carried the faint metallic tang of the industrial outskirts. Every step, every sound, every heartbeat reminded her that the mission was real and deadly. Inside the facility, the hum of machinery was nearly deafening. Security cameras rotated with precise timing, and guards moved in predictable patterns. Elise had memorized it all, yet she remained cautious. She had learned long ago that complacency killed more operatives than bullets ever could. As she moved through the corridors, she couldn't ignore the emotional weight pressing on her. The Directorate wasn't just a faceless organization. They were orchestrators of manipulation, betrayal, and fear. Elise remembered her past missions, the friends she had lost, the civilians whose lives had been upended by forces beyond their control. Each step into the data center was also a step into reckoning, not just with them, but with herself. Suddenly, a faint beep caught her attention. One of the Siren speakers, hidden among the equipment, had activated. Elise froze, listening as the calm, deliberate voice echoed, "Welcome back, Reaper Origin." Her stomach tightened. This was more than technology. It was psychological warfare. They were testing her, observing her reactions, measuring her resilience. But Elise had faced fear before. She had stared down death countless times. This was merely another challenge. She continued forward, her resolve solidifying. Reaching a secure door, she bypassed the lock with a deft combination of hacking skill and intuition. Inside was a room filled with monitors and consoles, displaying data from cities, towns, and military operations. Elise's eyes scanned rapidly, noting files marked with her coding name, surveillance reports, and mission histories. The directorate had been meticulously tracking her every move, even before she knew they existed. A sudden sound behind her made her spin around. A guard had entered unexpectedly. Elise reacted instantly, using her training to disarm and subdue him silently. The weight of reality pressed down. One mistake, one hesitation, and her life could end here. Yet even in danger, her mind remained clear. Each move was calculated, precise. Every decision had consequences, and she intended to survive and succeed. Hours passed as she gathered evidence. Emails, encrypted files, operational blueprints. They all painted a picture of a vast network of control, manipulation, and exploitation. The directorate wasn't just watching her. They were controlling events worldwide. And yet, Elise felt a quiet determination rising within her. She wasn't a pawn. She was a force they had underestimated, but the mission wasn't without cost. As she downloaded critical files, a security alert triggered. Red lights flashed, alarms echoed. Elise's pulse quickened, but her mind stayed sharp. She knew the facility better than the guards did at that moment. Using her knowledge of the layout and the timing of patrols, she navigated corridors, avoided cameras, and reached an emergency exit outside. The night air felt like a reprieve, but she didn't stop running until she reached her SUV. Kane met her at a prearranged spot, his expression grave. "You got it?" he asked. Elise handed over the drive containing the evidence. "Everything we need to expose them." "But they'll know I was here. They'll be coming." Kane nodded. "Good. That's why this next phase is critical. You can't just fight them with evidence. You have to make them respect the truth and respect you." For the first time in days, Elise allowed herself to breathe. The mission had been successful, but it had come at a cost. The knowledge that the directorate was always watching, always one step ahead. She knew the battle wasn't over. It was only beginning. Later that night, in the quiet of her home, Elise reflected on the journey so far. Millbrook, with its whispers, mockery, and small-town judgments, seemed almost distant now. Yet the lessons remained. Strength wasn't just physical. It was emotional, intellectual, and moral. Courage wasn't about recklessness. It was about perseverance when the odds were stacked against you. And justice wasn't given, it was earned, sometimes at great personal sacrifice. The Siren speakers, once mere technology, had become a symbol, a reminder of her past, a test of her present, and a key to the future. Elise knew that the real challenge lay ahead, confronting the directorate directly, facing betrayals she hadn't anticipated, and ensuring that the truth she carried wouldn't be buried or twisted. As dawn broke, painting the horizon with shades of orange and pink, Elise felt a quiet, resolute power rising within her. She was Reaper Origin. She had faced fear, betrayal, and doubt, and she would continue to face it all, not just for herself, but for the truth, for justice, and for the people who had trusted her. The next move was hers, and she intended to make it count. The files Elise had retrieved from the data center sat on her desk, humming faintly under the soft glow of her desk lamp. Each folder told a story of surveillance, manipulation, and lives altered by unseen hands. But one file caught her attention, making her stomach twist. It contained a dossier on her own missions, detailing not just the operations she had carried out overseas, but the people she had trusted, the allies she had lost, and the civilians caught in the crossfire. It was intimate, invasive, and it had been compiled by someone she had once considered a friend. Elise's hand trembled as she scrolled through the contents. Her mind flashed back to Marcus Holley, her former partner on countless operations. Marcus had been loyal, fearless, and brilliant, but now his name appeared repeatedly in connection with the directorate's activities. Her chest tightened. Betrayal was one thing she had learned to anticipate from enemies, but betrayal from Someone she trusted was a weight unlike any other. She confronted Kane immediately. "Marcus, he's involved. He's working with them," she said, her voice low, tight with emotion. Kane's expression darkened. "I had a feeling you'd find out eventually. He's always been ambitious, Elise. Maybe too ambitious for his own good." Elise clenched her fists. The anger, the pain, and the sense of injustice surged through her. Marcus hadn't just betrayed her. He had aligned himself with an organization that had stolen her past, manipulated her present, and now threatened the future. The next step was clear: confrontation. Elise and Kane devised a plan to intercept Marcus during a transfer of critical data between two directorate facilities. Timing was crucial. The success of the mission depended not just on precision, but on Elise's ability to remain calm under pressure, despite the emotional turmoil threatening to consume her. The night of the operation, Elise moved with practiced stealth. Shadows became allies, corridors became maps of opportunity, and every step was measured. Her mind, though focused, couldn't suppress the gnawing anticipation of facing Marcus. They had shared victories, losses, and moments of quiet trust. And now, the same man was standing on the other side of betrayal. The transfer site was a high-rise building in the outskirts of the city, heavily guarded, bristling with security cameras and automated defenses. Elise and Kane navigated the perimeter, disabling cameras and neutralizing guards silently. Finally, they reached the data room, only to find Marcus waiting. His expression was calm, almost smug, and for a moment, Elise felt the weight of every past memory with him crashing down. "Elise," he said, voice steady but cold, "I knew you'd come. I always knew you couldn't resist meddling in things you don't understand." "I trusted you," Elise said, her voice breaking slightly despite her efforts to remain composed. "We fought together, bled together. And you sold everything for this?" Marcus didn't flinch. "You are naive. You always thought loyalty meant more than power. I chose survival, Elise. I chose influence. You can't fight them all." Elise's anger surged, but she forced herself to focus. This was no longer about friendship. It was about justice. She needed the files, the proof, and the exposure of the directorate. She drew on every lesson she had learned: patience, precision, and the ability to turn emotional pain into tactical advantage. The confrontation escalated. Marcus tried to leverage security measures to trap them, but Elise anticipated each move. She used her knowledge of his patterns, their shared history, and the weaknesses in the facility's design to gain the upper hand. Every step was a dance of intellect, agility, and raw determination. Finally, she cornered Marcus, retrieving the critical data and ensuring it was secure. He struggled, his face a mix of frustration and disbelief. You're unstoppable," he muttered, almost as if conceding a painful truth. Elise didn't answer. Words weren't necessary. The mission was complete proof of the Directorate's operations was in her hands, and Marcus' betrayal had been exposed. She had turned personal anguish into triumph, channeling the depth of her emotional resilience into decisive action. As they exited the facility, Kane gave her a nod of respect. "You did it," he said simply. "You faced them, faced him, and came out stronger." Elise felt the weight of the night lift slightly, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. Justice wasn't always clean or easy, but it was worth fighting for. Millbrook's whispers, the small-town skepticism, and the betrayals of allies, all of it had forged her into someone who could face overwhelming odds without flinching. The files were ready to be released, the truth poised to dismantle the directorates. Influence, and Elise knew that the next chapter of her life would not be dictated by fear or deception. She had endured mockery, betrayal, and isolation, and she had emerged stronger, more resolute, and fully in command of her destiny. As dawn broke, Elise stood looking out over the city's skyline, the morning light illuminating the subtle scars. On her face, a testament to both her trials and her strength. She had been underestimated, tested, and challenged, but she had proven, not just to the Directorate, but to herself, that Reaper Origin was not a name to be forgotten. The next step would be public exposure, confrontation on a scale the Directorate hadn't anticipated, and ensuring that justice, once delayed, was finally delivered. Elise Harper, once mocked and underestimated, was now a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere, deep inside, she allowed herself a fleeting thought: the Siren. Speakers had been the warning, but she had become the reckoning. Elise sat in her home office, the hum of the computer and the faint glow of the monitors surrounding her like a cocoon of focus. The files she had retrieved from the Directorate were organized, encrypted, and ready for release. She had spent nights cross-checking every piece of data, ensuring the evidence was indisputable. Lives were at stake, reputations, and justice itself. There was no room for error. Kane stood behind her, silent, as Elise prepared the final transmission. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. His voice was calm, but the weight of the decision hung heavy in the room. "I am," Elise said firmly. "They've manipulated, betrayed, and destroyed countless lives. It ends now. It's time for the truth to be known. Not just to them, but to everyone who's been affected." The process of release was meticulous. Files went to journalists, law enforcement contacts, and watchdog organizations with the security to handle the truth. Each transmission was a calculated strike, designed to expose the Directorate without endangering innocent lives. Elise knew this was her strongest weapon: information, transparency, and the power of unassailable truth. But the Directorate did not remain idle. Alerts flared on her monitors almost immediately. Red warnings, traces of intrusion attempts, and security breaches indicated they had realized the scope of her actions. Elise's heart raced, but she did not falter. Every move had been planned, every contingency considered. The risk was immense, but the stakes demanded courage, not hesitation. Hours passed in tense silence. The first public reactions began to appear: news outlets reporting on the extensive surveillance network, anonymous whistleblowers confirming the authenticity of the evidence, and experts weighing in on the magnitude of the Directorate's reach. Elise allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The world was waking up to the truth, and she had delivered it. Then a knock at the door startled her. Elise spun around to see Marcus standing there, unguarded, unarmed. His expression was conflicted, a mixture of anger, shame, and something she could not immediately identify. "You?" Elise said, her voice steady, but laced with controlled fury. "Why are you here? To stop me? To finish what you started?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, I've seen what you've done. You're incredible, Elise. I underestimated you. I thought power was about control, influence. But you've shown me it's about integrity, courage, and action. I can't undo my betrayal, but I'm not going to stop you." Elise studied him carefully. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, but she realized the weight of her journey was not just about revenge. It was about justice and accountability. Marcus' presence was a reminder of the human cost of betrayal, but also of the strength required to rise above it. "I hope you understand," Elise said quietly. "This doesn't erase what happened, but it does prove one thing: no one can control the Reaper Origin." Marcus nodded, silent, before leaving. The encounter left a subtle but profound mark on Elise. She understood that true strength wasn't just measured by victories over enemies, but by resilience in the face of personal betrayal and the ability to uphold principles when tempted by revenge. Days later, the fallout from the release of the files was immense. Investigations were launched, high-ranking members of the Directorate were exposed, and international agencies scrambled to contain the scandal. Elise's name appeared in reports, not as a soldier or spy, but as a courageous whistleblower who had dared to challenge a shadowy empire. Back in Millbrook, the town that had once mocked her, whispers began to change. Curiosity replaced derision. Respect replaced doubt. People who had scoffed at her intelligence and bravery now recognized the magnitude of her accomplishments. Elise walked down the familiar streets with her head held high, not seeking admiration, but feeling a quiet, satisfying acknowledgement. From the world around her, the siren speakers, once mysterious harbingers of danger, now rested silently in her home. Their voice recognition, their eerie greeting, had been the catalyst for a journey that tested every ounce of her courage and strength. Welcome back, Reaper Origin. It had been a warning, a challenge, and ultimately, a call to action that Elise had answered with unwavering resolve. In the end, justice had been served, not through force alone, but through intelligence, courage, and relentless perseverance. Elise Harper had been underestimated, mocked, and betrayed, but she had emerged victorious, stronger, and wiser. As she looked out over the town she had once felt trapped in, Elise allowed herself a faint smile. The journey had demanded sacrifice, resilience, and the courage to confront both her enemies and herself. But she had succeeded, not just in exposing the Directorate, but in proving that strength, integrity, and bravery could overcome even the most insidious forces. The world had recognized her. Millbrook had recognized her. And most importantly, she had recognized herself. Reaper Origin was not a shadow of the past. It was a legacy of courage, a testament to resilience, and a promise that no one, no matter how powerful, could ever control her destiny. As the sun rose, Elise knew this was only the beginning. The battles she had fought were won, the betrayals confronted, and the truth exposed. But life, as always, would continue to test her, and she would meet every challenge with the same unwavering strength that had defined her journey from the very beginning. The siren speakers remained quiet now, their ominous greeting replaced by silence. But Elise understood their significance. They had reminded her of her identity, her courage, and the power that lay within. And with that knowledge, she stepped forward into a future she had earned, ready for whatever came next.